And to this day, even though apartheid has been gone, 30 years plus, you still have certain career fields where there's few black people there, because the system was designed to keep them out. And in addition to that, the education was of such quality that you're not going to have a lot of black engineers, black scientists, etc., because the education system during apartheid was not great. Now, enter the ANC government, who is supposed to move at lightning speed to correct a poor education system and all those things that are meant to keep black people out. Some of the legislation the government came up with was to say, okay, what we need to do in every sector of the economy, we need to have black representation, which I think in the US was called DEI. The black representation in the US and in SA, even though in terms of concept they sound the same, they are not the same here in South Africa, because in South Africa, we are trying to address what apartheid did to the black majority so that there is equality between the white population and the black population. In fact, the intent of the government was never to make black people superior over the whites. It was just to say, let us be equal. And when the legislation was crafted, in majority of the times, it will be crafted in this manner, that every sector must reflect the population balance. So the population balance in South Africa is that it's 80% black, 9% white, and then I think 7% Asian, etc. So wherever you look in the country, everything must reflect that. Now, what happened is, especially in the economy, even though that is an outcome the government was gearing for, you had an issue where when the democratic government came in, the economic sector said, well, we hear you, but your people don't have the skills. So you had a huge gap, and this was by design, that the people shouldn't have the skills. And this was by design, that the people should not be in the commanding heights of the economy. So what that meant is the government now has, however many years, time that they need to correct that you have fewer black engineers, you have fewer black attorneys, etc. Every other sector that you can think of the economy, and do something by equipping the black majority and getting them through. You also had bottlenecks in the way the apartheid system was designed. It was not designed to encapsulate or be able to draw in and be able to capture 80% of the population now coming in to say, okay, we want to be lawyers, we want to be doctors, we want to be etc. The universities themselves were far too few to even handle it. The schooling system itself would have to be completely redesigned. Completely. And the government had to, they came up with all sorts of things. We have what we call SETAs in South Africa, where every economic sector has a functionary from government that looks at the sector in terms of transformation. And when we talk about transformation, we are talking about the fact that how many black people are there in that sector. And if it's majority white, doesn't reflect the population, needs to be corrected. So the so-called SETAs are there to help those sectors to redress the error. Okay, so in South Africa, you have an issue where even though all these things are in place, the speed at which transformation was happening was super slow. So you have a population of the black majority who are still not represented in the economy. Now notice I didn't even speak about farming, because farming is just one of the sectors where black people are hardly represented. Wherever you go in the commanding sectors of the economy, you will struggle to find black people being the majority, which is an apartheid construct which the government has been trying to address. Now, in order to talk about the farm matters, it is completely impossible to talk about what's going on there without understanding the context of South Africa. If you understand the context of apartheid, if you understand the progress in redressing apartheid, then you will understand the challenges that South Africa is facing, especially the black majority population. In addition to that, with the ANC government not redressing apartheid ills, let's use the word, with a correct pace or fast enough to be able to have the people feel they are enjoying democracy gains, things began to happen that polarized the nation even more. And these things happen because, again, I say, there is resistance to the nation coming together in one mind and saying apartheid was an evil thing. Black people have been left out of the economy. Let us go in and bring them in full force. There has been a slow walk towards that. What did happen is it radicalized people in the land. It led to the formation of the Economic Freedom Front and many other parties. In fact, the EFF in itself is not the first party. There are many other parties that began to evolve, because in South Africa, unlike the US, we don't have two parties, but these parties began to evolve as an answer to the fact that the pace of redress is at snail pace. So other parties are coming into the fold and saying, look, the ANC government is not going to redress this fast enough, so we want to take a shot at this and see if we can fix this. So if you do not understand that, you will not understand what is called the radical left, the EFF and the likes. You will never be able to understand that. And for many people who choose to put on blinkers over the apartheid redress issue, they choose to isolate the left as radicals and try to put them in the context of global geopolitics. For example, in the US, they talk of DEI, which is not the same as here in South Africa. In South Africa, the issue is black majority have been dispossessed and were left out on the margins of society. Now that they are fully incorporated via democracy, it's time for them to share in the economic gains and share in the wealth of the country. That process has been the snail pace thing ever. There has been some here and there, and that's a topic for another day. But the point is, even the few elite who have benefited, there's a small number of the black middle class who have come up as part of this redress. You still have the majority of the black Africans being poor. The majority of the unemployed in this country is the black Africans. You could say statistically that's kind of common sense because they are the majority. But if you think about it, that doesn't even make sense anyway. But here's the point, that the redress has not moved at a pace enough to arrest the rise up of left movements or whatever that people are fearful of, has not moved at the fast pace enough to allow for anti-radicalization of the country, moved at a fast pace enough to allow for a crime-free country and unemployment-free country. And that remains the core of South Africa's problems. All the other things you are hearing on the news are just symptoms of the core of South Africa's problem. The core of South Africa's problem is the redress of apartheid has not been fully achieved. We can put the numbers later on in terms of the statistics. That's the long and short of it. From a geopolitical point of view, you need to understand that we cannot divorce what the US is doing or Donald Trump is doing on South Africa without the fact of bringing in the fact that South Africa took Israel to the ICJ and so on. So that's not even a legit thing that they are doing there. But from a South Africa point of view, you need to understand the context. The context is everything you are seeing, the noise and the crime and the unemployment, is the fact that when apartheid ended, the black majority were on the margins of society. And the democracy promises were that we're going to bring black people in, they will benefit from the minerals that they enjoy, etc., etc. They will benefit from the wealth of the land, and we will redress and we will reverse all the apartheid ills. And when we are done, there will be no white person superior to a black person. Everybody will be equal. That has moved at a snail pace. And that is the core of all problems.